Hi, I'm Kenny Roo. Welcome to Kangaroo Energy, where we share practical knowledge on energy, money, technology, innovation, and everyday life. We have something important today. Let's get into it.
Hi, I am from Kangaroo Energy. Petrol prices across Australia are suddenly climbing again, and many drivers are asking the same question. Are fuel stations simply passing on costs, or are some of them taking advantage of drivers when prices spike? In this video, we will break down what is really happening with petrol prices in Australia, why prices seem to jump overnight, and what everyday drivers can do to avoid paying more than necessary. Because once you understand how the fuel market works, you may start noticing patterns that were hidden in plain sight. Let's start with what drivers are experiencing right now. Across many Australian cities, petrol prices have surged again. One week, you might see a liter of fuel at a reasonable price, and just days later, the same station suddenly jumps by 20 or 30 cents. For many families, that difference adds up quickly. If you drive regularly for work, school runs, or business, even small increases can cost hundreds of dollars extra over a year. But here is the confusing part. When drivers see fuel prices rising quickly, the assumption is that global oil prices must be rising at the same speed. In reality, that is not always the case. Petrol prices in Australia are influenced by several factors. The global price of crude oil is one of them. The Australian dollar exchange rate also plays a role. Transportation costs, refining costs, and government fuel taxes all affect the final price you see at the pump. However, there is another factor that many drivers do not realize exists. It is called the fuel price cycle. In many Australian cities, petrol prices follow a repeating pattern where prices slowly drop over several days or weeks and then suddenly spike back up in a single day. This pattern can look confusing if you do not know what is happening behind the scenes. Fuel retailers often lower prices gradually to compete with nearby stations. Then, at some point, prices reset higher again across multiple stations in the area. This is why you might drive past a petrol station one morning and see a much higher price than the day before. Some consumer advocates argue that these sudden spikes make it difficult for drivers to know when they are getting a fair deal. Because if you fill up at the wrong time during the cycle, you may end up paying significantly more than someone who filled up a few days earlier. Another concern raised by critics is transparency. Drivers often feel that fuel pricing is unpredictable and difficult to understand. When prices rise sharply but oil prices remain relatively stable, people naturally start asking whether something else is happening. Regulators in Australia do monitor the fuel market, and agencies regularly analyze pricing behavior across the industry. But even with monitoring, the retail fuel market remains competitive and complex. Prices can change quickly based on local competition, delivery schedules, and pricing strategies used by different operators. So, what can drivers actually do to protect themselves? The first step is awareness. If you understand that fuel prices move in cycles, you can start paying attention to the pattern in your city. Many drivers who track the cycle learn to buy fuel near the low point rather than during the spike. The second step is using fuel price comparison tools. Across Australia, there are several apps and services that allow drivers to check petrol prices at nearby stations before filling up. Sometimes two stations just a few kilometers apart can have a difference of 15 to 30 cents per liter. That means a quick price check before filling your tank could save a surprising amount over time. The third step is planning when possible. If you notice prices starting to climb rapidly in your area, it may indicate that the price cycle is resetting. In those situations, waiting a few days may allow prices to fall again. Of course, this is not always possible for everyone, especially if you rely heavily on your vehicle for daily travel. But understanding the pattern gives drivers more control over when and where they buy fuel. There is also a bigger long-term conversation happening in Australia about energy costs, transport, and how households manage rising living expenses. Petrol prices are just one part of that discussion. As technology evolves, more Australians are also exploring alternatives such as electric vehicles, public transport options, and smarter energy usage at home. While these changes take time, the way Australians think about energy costs is already shifting. For now, petrol remains a major part of everyday life for millions of drivers across the country. And when prices spike suddenly, It affects almost every household. The important thing is not just reacting to the price you see at the pump. It is understanding how the system works so you can make smarter choices as a driver. If you found this breakdown useful and want more practical insights about energy, money, and everyday costs in Australia, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Subscribe for more videos, like, share, and stay informed.
Hi, I'm Kenny Roo. If this helped, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment what you'd like us to cover next.